Well, welcome to Good Business Pays TV, the channel where you can find out everything you need to know about late and slow payment to small businesses. This is one of a series of interviews that we've been doing with Intuit QuickBooks customers. And today we are joined by Andrew Price, who's the chief executive at Synapx, which is a technology company. So, welcome and thank you for spending some time with me today, Andrew. And I want to ask the first question. Tell us all about your story, your business. How did it come to be? What does it do? Who are your customers? And what does Synapse do?
Yeah, thank you, Terry. Pleasure to be on. I could really resonate with what you're doing when I heard about it a month or so ago. It was a great opportunity to come and talk about our experiences in this area and seeing if that can work towards your campaign. In terms of my journey, I think I've been in industry now for about 15 years. Pretty much my career has always been around process automation. Originally, it was internal within a large global consultancy and how to um, implement consistency, standard process across all of their projects for major corporations. And then I realized during that time that these skills I had were very cross-transferable. I started an area within that consultancy to start doing this for business. And then towards the end of that journey, towards the late end of 2021, I became familiar with the Microsoft tool set, specifically within the Microsoft Power Platform. And I just felt that these tools were so transformational, both to the work I was doing in process automation, but to our customers, that I felt that this was a great opportunity to potentially take a leap of faith and to start my own business in this space. Yes, in short, we're a process automation company that use the Microsoft tool set specifically within the Power Platform at the moment. We are cross-industry. We work with any sector who need our sort of services. Uh, Typically, I would say probably around 50% is in financial services. But we work with charities, we work with schools. I mean, we're very open to working with any organization. We're best suited for companies where there's a lot of manual process, obviously, maybe a lot of emails, a lot of back and forth between teams, everyone working in Excel. We brand ourselves as the Excel killers. And even recently, we're pulled into a call with a global construction company about what does that actually mean. But over the 3.5 years we've been going, we now based in the UK and in India. We're a global headcount of around 40 now, 15 of us here in the UK. And yeah, we in terms of who our clients are, I guess some of the big names people would be familiar with are Kellanova. Um, we work with Intuit, which is quite funny. It's all came about through part of this relationship. We also work with other companies like Jensen Insurance, Aspen Insurance. We worked with Fidelis. Yeah, some pretty large companies, and also, like I said, some very small ones as well.
Hmm. So tell me more about the Excel killers, actually, because I'm interested. We have what we call a live feed from Department of Business and Trade statistics that we use for producing payment data, and it's all on Excel spreadsheet, and it's 100,000 lines or something. Do you kill that off and do something different, or your killers at making it at visualizing it in a different way? What does that mean, Excel killers?
There's no bigger fan of Excel than me. I started from zero to be pretty efficient in it before I discovered some of these new tools. But um, I think uh, the way I see Microsoft Excel is that most people have used it. It's probably one of the tools most used in business, and the older generation, probably even like myself, learnt it in school. So when you go into business and you're receiving data sent to you in Excel, like CSV files or Excel files, you have no choice but to learn it and to access things. What do people do with Excel? They they see data, they might manage process. So different teams go in and use it as tracking, whether it be a project or, like you said, payments have been paid or not. People can do reporting with charts. So it's really, really handy. But I guess over the most recent years, Excel has become more of a collaborative tool where multiple people can come in and they can work together as multiple teams. But that brings challenges. The challenges are that you either see all the data or nothing. And sometimes different departments should be able to see different types of data. For instance, HR might be able to see people's salaries in when you're looking at employee information, but as a line manager, you want to see some properties like their vacation balance. And so you're really stuck in a data security, especially with GDPR and everything. You're stuck in a world where the Excel crashes, someone deletes a column and you don't know who did it, or deletes a row, and then the charts are all you have to go and copy the data from some other system, paste it into the Excel, and then the classic where a person a bit like me is a disruptor. They write an Excel macro. People don't know what it does, but magically it does what it does, and then suddenly it stops working, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, this critical thing to our business is broken." So these are the challenges that we look to address. We don't necessarily always replace Excel. We just look to integrate sometimes with it from external systems. So to give a couple of case studies for an energy distribution company, they built a pricing model for sites. Let's say that they wanted to bid on supplying energy to Wembley Stadium for 10 years. They built an extremely complex Excel model, one of the most complex I've seen. That's 40 tabs, hundreds of thousands of rows of data where they're trying to manage meters and budgets. And if you can imagine the classic that you said, performance issues start arising when there's so many rows. And then once you've actually signed that energy deal and that model has got loads of assumptions in it and everything, if you've gone and done 100 of those models, how do you compare those 100 Excels against your meter usage to know, well, was my model accurate or not? Do we need to adjust our models in future? Do we need to speak to the actual Wembley Stadium and understand why this usage is different? And so our advice to them, which they took, was that actually we use the Power Platform tools. We take all the great knowledge that the team have invested into the Excel with their algorithms and calculations, etc., and we put it in a low code digital way. And I think we work with businesses where if they want to mobilize things in Excel, that's absolutely fine because that's their way of being able to provide their business value. And we just take that and help it more to be more robust. And by having a low code application, suddenly we can control access to data. We can put approval flows in when people are maybe reducing margins. And then we have all the data in one place where we can then combine that with the usage data to then provide one overall picture.
Terrific. It sounds like you could use that system to speed up payments inside of companies that have very slow processes for approval of invoices and what have you as well.
We've built that for some customers as well. Yes. Just as a very brief example, uh, we have automation that runs on an emails that come into a mailbox. AI picks those up. It reads the PDF, extracts out information around who the supplier is, the line items, the payment terms, when the payment's due. We store all of that data in one central place, and then we use an application to manage these things to be able to keep on track of when payments are necessary, approval thresholds. So if we know that the invoice is 30K and the approver of this invoice or the invoice is addressed to Bob, if Bob only has a 20K approval limit, when Bob approves it, it's then got to go to their boss afterwards for approval. Or if it's under the 20K limit, then when Bob approves, that tells the finance team that they're ready to pay that. And even for some companies, we even generate banking extracts off the back of these approvals so they can just upload a CSV file straight into their banking software to make those payments.
Well, there we go. That's terrific. We'll make sure that people know that you can fix the problem for us when we find out who needs it fixing. Uh,
Yeah.
so you're actually at 40 odd employees. You're almost at the point now of becoming a medium-sized company. You've gone from very small to getting bigger and bigger. So you must have seen, I'm assuming anyway, some examples of either late or slow payment. Slow being, when we talk about slow payment, we say something that's probably over 80 days. We can definitely sort of say that's slow to get paid. But then there's also the problem with late, which is you told me you're going to pay me in 30, it's now 40 and it hasn't arrived. Have you had experiences of this? And if so, could you give us some examples of how it might have affected your business operations?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, in short, absolutely. I wouldn't say all clients, but there's probably been an incident with most clients where something's happened some month. Um, I mean, I could probably list you 10 common reasons I'm told why the payment is late. But more importantly, it's the contracts that you're signing. And some of the things that when you read it, you don't think of it as an issue, actually could then lend to be an issue. So I guess some examples would be we do all of our work. We issue an invoice at the end of the month or upon completion of the project. Uh, we've been given an email address that we need to send this invoice to. We send it. We might not get confirmation or acknowledgement, and then you're then following up, going, "You haven't said anything. Can you acknowledge you've got this invoice? Is it in the system?" And then, yeah, like I said, probably 10 reasons I can give you that I've heard at this point. Once you've raised it, it could be that um, the clock of your payment term only starts when the person approves the invoice. It could be that the email got lost. It could be that even though they've approved the invoice, um, they only do payment runs every 2 weeks on a Friday. So then suddenly there's another 2 weeks added onto your payment term as a reason why they haven't paid. It could be that there's a dispute on a very tiny part of the invoice where you're arguing potentially over less than 1%. And rather than paying it and then reconciling it, or paying it, and then maybe they say that actually you're right. Uh, let's say that in the end it's agreed that we have to make a tweak of that 1%. We then have to raise a new invoice, and then the clock starts again. Um, yeah, just I guess many different reasons. Nearly all of them aren't related to our work or what we've done. It's more, it can, and I guess the bigger the company, the more that the approver tells you, look, to be honest with you, our finance team just aren't able to keep on top of, the volume of invoices that are coming in, and I'll keep going and having to escalate. And I think what I see, because obviously I'm all around process automation and I help businesses with these challenges. I don't think big business understand how much productivity is lost in their own businesses by paying customers late, because maybe they don't want to pay customers late, but their processes are so bad, it consumes so much time of their leaders who need to approve or chase these invoices, that it actually hurts them as well as hurting us. And then the last part of your question was the impact. Well, I think when you're a small business like us, you're not settled. You're trying to grow, and you don't tend to have large amounts of cash just sitting in the bank, because either you don't have it, or you're continually wanting to invest. You're like, I want to now hire a new employee, or et cetera, et cetera. So um, you don't run with a lot of working capital if you're like us, who started with our own capital and haven't previously started a business and exited, etc. So the key question we're always asking ourselves is, okay, what's our bank balance? What amounts have we got coming out, and when? And when are we expecting invoices to be paid? And normally, when you're looking at reporting, your measure of when you expect to be paid is the due date. And you then can't trust that. You have to use your own experience to say, well, actually, this client on average pay 8 days late. And I think probably the biggest thing I think to stress is, and you said about the growth, is probably when we were 5 or 6 people, if we had a cash flow problem for 2 or 3 months, I might be able to find the money. I might be able to pull it out of my savings and address that problem. But the risk gets higher and higher the bigger we get. And unfortunately, it means that we might not be able to take the calculated growth decisions that we want through fear of late payment, because we essentially have to keep more capital available so that we can cover shortfalls, because we personally can't bankroll it anymore. Um, just putting it short. So yeah, in order for us to be able to focus more on growth and not worry about cash flow, we have to leave more in the bank. I think that's probably the best way of explaining it.
Yes, you can't say to your employees, we'll pay you 8 or 9 days or 30 days late. They won't stay very long.
No, absolutely. And you know, the first few employees that we hired, they didn't have families or children, et cetera, et cetera. You have that informal relationship with them because you've maybe previously worked with them, but it gets a lot more real when you know that people have children and mortgages, and you can't help but carry that responsibility yourself, to make sure that you do run a tight operation.
Now, it's interesting because you've worked in big companies and you're running smaller ones, but you also described a frustrating process within big companies where either their processes aren't ideal, or they're spending lots of time actually managing supplier payments themselves, or their systems are complicated, and that it affects their productivity.
Mhm.
You say. And it also frustrates you because you should be talking about killing Excel or whatever it is, not actually trying to chase payments.
Yeah.
What do you think is the opportunity for bigger companies to, let's say, improve productivity? Because a lot of big companies will just say, well, we need to hang on to cash, and that if we've got people hanging on to cash, that's a good thing, isn't it? What kind of productivity improvement do you see for a big company if they pay the suppliers faster through whatever system?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. So I think I've seen simple use cases for paying invoices, and I've seen complicated ones for business. So the simple ones are, have you delivered this milestone? Yes, someone approves it, we pay it. And there's no purchase order numbers, there's no complexity, and there's no such thing as payment runs. They will schedule the payment to pay you on the 30 days, whenever your payment term is. The the complex ones where I think the real opportunity is, because on the simple ones, the only way you really get hurt with that is volume. If you have a lot of volume, obviously that comes a bit more difficult. But the complex ones I've seen are where, in specifically, I guess as an example I have is insurance, where you a broker comes to you and says, "Will you? I have a client who's interested in insuring their cat. Can you provide a quote?" You provide a quote of £300 to insure the cat for a year. The broker will then go back with that quote, and the person decides to buy that policy. The broker, at the end of the month, will raise an invoice against the insurance company to say, "I've given you these 100 policies that you've ended up selling. Here are all of the different commission amounts you owe me across 100." Now, if you imagine, if that's manual, that is an extremely difficult process. You've got to go and look in the policy system for all 100 policies in that example. Is the commission rate right? Did the customer end up cancelling that policy? All of these terms and conditions that the lawyers put into place to ensure that the business financially is protected. And unfortunately, in 2 or 3 insurance companies in this particular use case, I've seen exactly this. They're having to scale teams internally to be able to manually do all of these checks, uh, and the the process in itself doesn't protect the potentially small brokers either, because what they essentially do is they do this exercise once a month, and if there's any misalignment on those 100, so let's say 18 of those, for some reason there's a discrepancy, they'll go back to the broker and they'll say, "We're going to be paying these 78, but these 22, we're not going to pay because you've got this wrong by £10, blah, blah, blah." They do not provide another opportunity to get paid for those until they raise their invoice the following month, because Their internal process is so manual that it's too time consuming to be able to go and check it again if they were to go and fix it. So the opportunities that we've identified for them is through automation. We can, an example I gave before, automatically read PDF documents that are coming into the mailbox. We can extract the data. We can compare that data versus their policy system. If we find that it reconciles, we can automatically mark it for payment because all the checks give us the confidence we can pay it. And then for the ones that we reject, we can present those to the team. The team can review it. The team can say, actually, there's a mistake in the policy system. We got it wrong. Or they can say, actually, it is their side. Once they hit submit, an automated reply goes back to the supplier, the broker. The broker then has an opportunity to resubmit, and it goes through all the automation again. And you can do that as many times as you like until the end of the month. And then at the very end of the month, once for all the ones that are reconciled, they will be paid. And so uh, the time saving for that team is just astronomical. There are 20 people in that team, pretty much down to 6 people, and they were able to repurpose those 14 other people onto much more higher value tasks.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the business case there is absolutely obvious. I had actually got a question about because a lot of the work that it seems that you do is in some of what I call the legacy systems or old-fashioned systems is modernizing a process and making it simpler and easier and smoother and etc.
Yeah.
Even if you come across as you will big systems like Cooper, right, and Ariba, where you're faced with big company supplier systems, we invoiced ourselves one of our big clients, and it was through Cooper, which is supposed to be one of the sort of state of the art systems. And when it came to matching an invoice with a purchase order, we got a PowerPoint with 16 easy steps to match the invoice to a purchase order, which was one of many steps. And I was questioning why in these systems things need to be so difficult for small businesses to manage because it can take months to get onboarded. It can take months to get paid because if you get the full stop in the wrong place, everything goes wrong.
Yeah.
Does it need to be so complicated for small businesses to manage these systems, especially with multiple big clients?
Yeah, absolutely not. I completely agree. I think what I found with those, and obviously we're a technology company, so we look for opportunities to automate our own process. But in my time in that large consultancy and in this business, when I've been asked to work with those sorts of systems, not only do Cooper, I don't want to call them out individually, but not only do these big systems charge their, our client to use this product, there's a paywall for us. You get a very, very basic license for free, which just allows you to manually have to interact with these systems. But the moment that you want to do any sort of reporting to see on status, or if you want to use their APIs to automatically raise your invoices to save critical time as us as a small business, you have to pay. And it just feels very wrong, really, in that regard that they're taking the opportunity to charge both sides. Because I think from their perspective, they feel that it would be only the bigger companies that would look to use their automations because they would be doing mass volume. But you're absolutely right. Even the user interface and the user journey is not easy or intuitive. You do have to wait around for logins. I've had situations also where you need to be onboarded as a supplier, and that process is done somewhere else, and you've gone through it, and then actually that doesn't talk to the invoice portal. Meanwhile, your customer really wants you to get cracking with the work because it takes months to onboard a supplier into a big organization, typically. So, yeah, I completely resonate with the challenges you said.
Yes, and I mean, what's refreshing? I'm really enjoying this chat because you've got so many concrete case studies and examples that bring these stories to life, and to hear that there actually is a business case which I can understand for a big company to say, let's get this sorted out and pay our suppliers faster is really good, because it just seems as though a lot of companies, larger ones, are stuck in this world of, well, we'll have a big AP department or whatever it is, and a system designed to slow everything down. And of course, then it causes the harm that you talked about. But on the other hand, one of the things that we like to talk about sometimes is fast and fair payment, right? Because there are clients, you will have them, especially in financial services, who do pay fairly, who do pay fast. Um, what difference has it made, or has it made any difference to you and your business as it's grown, where you've got clients that are, let's call them, reliable, fast payers?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because when you're a smaller business like us and doing the types of works we do, you're typically seen as a boutique. So we don't have hundreds of customers paying small invoices. We have low volume invoices with reasonable numbers on them for us as a business. And if you know that 60 or 70% of your revenue for that month is only going to be paid by three clients who pay on time, that mitigates a lot of risk. Absolutely. And in truth, late payment, it's all about what your percentage of revenue is going to be paid late. Because it's not really, if the small ones aren't paid, it's probably not going to hurt you as much.
Mm, mm. So I've got a separate question actually, which is, before you get to the point of problems with payment, is tips for other business owners, particularly in the smaller side, who are trying to scale up like yourselves, trying to negotiate good terms or fair terms with a bigger customer. Can you think of any tips that you would give to a business leader who wants to go into a negotiation and negotiate something that's fair for them, so that they don't get into these kind of problems?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And by the way, I've only learnt these tips through suffering. So uh, certainly happy to share. So in my experience, the best starting point is to have your own contract. If you have your own contract, you're laying out terms that you think are fair to both parties and allows you to plan how you do business. And in my experience, it's quite rare that if you lay down your contract first, that things specifically around payment is challenged by the other party too much. Um, Usually, I see in the odd case they may challenge the payment term of 30 days. They may ask for 45, and we need to understand their type of business to determine whether or not we think that's fair. So, for example, if it's a charity and there's specific reasons where they get their money quarterly from events that they run, then maybe that's an acceptable reason. In my experience, the worst case we had was we laid out our contract, and almost immediately, probably one of our biggest clients laid down and said, "Actually, we want you to use our contract." And the that contract that they gave us provides two challenges. A, as a small business, you don't typically have solicitors and lawyers just sitting around in the business. So you then have to invest either a lot of your time in an area that you're maybe not qualified to spend a lot of money on time for external support to help you read through that contract. And in this particular case, their payment term was 120 days, and uh, we changed a lot. They allowed us to change a lot of their contract. It was quite expensive for us to change it because, for instance, it was US jurisdiction. We wanted the UK jurisdiction, which they eventually agreed to. But the one thing they wouldn't budge on was the 120-day payment term. And uh, I don't think there's any justification for it at all. And they weren't willing to budge on it. And that puts you in a very, very difficult position as a business owner. Um, and I think the way that I would describe it is if you if you're going into that, at least you know that that's what you're going into. And even though you have that master services agreement, you know that if you're putting a huge project in front of the customer, you know that as long as they pay on time, then you need to make sure that the way you structure the contract allows you, from a cash flow perspective, to mitigate that problem. And I think where you'd get into challenges would be that you say upon delivery of a £50,000 project, you will raise an invoice. Well, actually, that's probably too late. You're going to have done all the work, wait 4 months to get paid. A more sensible approach would be, right, we need to factor in potentially getting a £50,000 overdraft, and this is the charge we would get. You need to factor in breaking down the contract for the work you're going to deliver into maybe much smaller milestones. So you're issuing 10 invoices for that 50,000, and then actually you'll start to see some of that money before maybe the project is finished. In this particular client's case, the project sponsor for what they wanted us to do with sympathized with the legal's view on things and said that we could actually invoice them on day one for the work, because they knew that the work would be probably completed within the 120 days. So as long as they approved it, then the few weeks that were left, they could have an opportunity to block it if for whatever reason we hadn't done the job we said we were going to do.
Listen, it's been fascinating to hear these examples. Thank you very much for spending some time with us today and for sharing your experience, Andrew. Much appreciated.